Welcome to Until Saturday, the Athletics College Football Podcast. I am David Ubben.
I'm Chris Vannini.
Damien Harris checking in.
Week 4, a great time to whip out the magnifying glass and take a very close look at a bunch of teams across the sport and uncover who are the biggest imposters in college football. It seemed like a lot of that was going around. Major meltdowns across the country. They give us the evidence that we need to pull them out and point to them and say, hey, you've been getting by. No more. We're done taking you seriously. And so while there were some meltdowns from teams like Kansas State, Oklahoma, Memphis, a few others, there's plenty of teams that aren't them. Some great performances from Louisville, Michigan, people who were kind of raising their eyebrows at, and others.
Oh, man, we're gonna have to have the. Hold on, I hate to stop you, but we're gonna have to have this Louisville conversation again. Louisville. Especially because they won. Put some respect on their name, Louisville.
All right, we're gonna give it to the Louisville Sluggers out here. Sad Husker Nate, by the way, gave us a ring on our Until Saturday phone line to ask, why do we have to keep pretending Missouri is good? Come on now. We'll get there. And we'll play your voicemails. And as always, you can call our phone line at 316-462-9852. We heard from y'all this week. It was great to hear from you guys. And we're going to play some of the best calls here on our podcast. And our Mondays shows are always full of you guys' response from the weekend. And the games always provide plenty of fodder for you guys and us, of course. Plus, we're going to talk Heismans and Criesmans of the week, including maybe the actual Heisman frontrunner. Plus, our locks have had better weeks, but the trust fall, guys, the circle of trust is back.
Yeah,
we're feeling good. We'll hit that later. We're going to recap that. But first, guys, we got to start in Norman, Oklahoma. Josh Heupel comes back to OU and delivers a beatdown. I'll start here, guys. You look at this defense. 3 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, interception, 4 pass breakups, 4 quarterback hits. We got to get to the Oklahoma quarterback situation, which is in dire straits now. You say goodbye to Dylan Gabriel. You bring in, you push Jackson Arnold. It's his time, and now you're not even into October of his first year as a starter, and he gets benched. We'll talk more about that when we get there. But my takeaway for Tennessee to start with this is a team that I thought played a C+, B- game. Did not play well. Did well defensively, but they didn't hardly break a sweat. They were in control of this game from start to finish, win this thing by 2 scores, and it wasn't quite even that close. So that to me says a lot about Tennessee. But with Oklahoma, as we're talking about teams that melted down, the red flags have been there, guys. They've been there, and offensively especially, they looked sluggish against Tulane. They looked really just bad against Houston. Temple, I think you can kind of throw out. But Chris, what do you make of Oklahoma's quarterback situation? And in the Athletic 134, how far did they drop after losing a top 15 showdown and looking, I'll say, barely competitive in that game?
I've got Oklahoma at 26th in my 134 rankings out of my top 25. They have not been good all season.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, if it wasn't Oklahoma on the side of the helmet, like we wouldn't have this team still ranked in the other polls.
Say it louder so they can hear you, Chris.
And we came into this season and I kept saying with Jackson Arnold, I couldn't get that Alamo ball out of my head when he couldn't stop turning the ball over against Arizona. Now you say, hey, maybe it's a bowl game. It's a different situation. Some guy's not playing, whatever. No, he can't stop turning the ball over. It was a problem again against Tennessee on Saturday. So much so that he got benched in the first half for Michael Hawkins, who
true freshman.
You know what that says? You know what that says about you and I know he's a first-year starter for Oklahoma, but you know what that says? You're, game 3, game 4 in the season?
Yeah.
And you're getting benched for a true freshman? Like, that speaks volumes. Like, that is a conversation that your head coach is having with himself. Like, this just isn't the guy. And a guy with absolutely zero experience, with nothing under their belt, no feet under them at all. He thinks that this guy gives you a better chance. Like,
yeah,
and I feel bad in a sense for Jackson Arnold because that has to be a tough feeling. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of stuff like that. Like, you have to know, like, if I don't perform, somebody else is going to take my job at some point.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. That's just the way this business works. Guys are just taking up seats until the next guy comes in and fills it. And for Jackson Arnold, it's an early back seat to a guy, like I said, that has no experience. So I think that is very telling of just how poorly he's playing. Again, you look at a true freshman with zero experience. You got Texas in a couple weeks. There's a lot of things very time sensitive and urgent for Oklahoma. Yeah. And again, you're going with a guy who has no experience. And that means Jackson Arnold has just been playing that poorly.
I would add, by the way, like, Oklahoma's missing quite a few receivers. They have been all year. The offensive line is not great. They like Michael Hawkins, like, since he came in, like, you've heard pretty good reports out of him on campus, stuff like that. But this is not what you want to be. And if you're Oklahoma, like, if you're Brent Venables, your defense played well. You got some turnovers. You did what you wanted to do to win this game. And yet the offense just gave you nothing.
It's kind of amazing. You hold Tennessee to 25 points, and Tennessee, I think, played very, very conservatively for a lot of reasons. I think it was very clear that they didn't.
They knew they could. They knew they could.
They didn't have to push it, and so there's something to be said for that. But with Jackson Arnold, you see the tools. Like, you're not watching him going, "Why is this guy a 5-star?" Like, you can see it, but the accuracy is off, the processing is off, and things look like they're moving really, really fast. And the last turnover, the play that got him benched. I mean, you're throwing a screen to the far side of the field. You one hop it. It bounces backwards. It was an iffy call, whatever. Like, they let it play out, but like, that's a simple throw that
should be like tossing. What do they say? Tossing a water balloon to a 2-year-old. Like, that should be easy. That should be easy pitch and catch. Again, I'm always thinking of, like, some of the stuff that I heard in my career. Like, Bill Belichick, if he was, granted, NFL versus college, but he would have looked at somebody in that situation and been like, I could go to Foxborough High School and find somebody that can catch a snap and throw a screen pass. I mean, that's not hard. You know what I mean? So again, to your point, David, I don't think it's as much of a confusion as why Jackson Arnold had, the 5-star rating, why he was a good prospect coming out of high school. Just when you turn on the tape, he's just not delivering. He's just not performing.
And I think too, you point to the offensive line, obviously the weapons. Seth Luttrell, a new offensive coordinator, is an analyst there last year. I didn't love a lot of the play calling. I thought they did a nice job of kind of keeping Michael Hawkins in some good spots, using his legs in good spots. I will see what they say on Monday. It seems to me you have to kind of turn the page and see what you have in Hawkins at this point. But that's not where you want to be. And I said before the season, there's a lot more pressure on Oklahoma than people think. And Dylan Gabriel's not setting the world on fire, but he's not getting close to getting benched. This is the guy that they have now. This is a game that a lot of places are playing where you get the big time recruit in and you get the 1-year rental and you say, well, we got this recruit, we got to save him a spot. Be careful. And Oklahoma is living that. On the flip side of it, Tennessee, Chris, how far did the Vols move up? They have looked like a certified wagon thus far this season. I have some questions about how they can match up when they play teams that can match them athlete for athlete. When they play Georgia, when they play Alabama, a lot of times it has not gone well for them. But right now they played really well defensively, especially on the line of scrimmage. They can really be a factor and do some things they haven't been able to do previously. The offensive line, that's the other thing. They were missing both tackles last night, which really kind of hampered their offense a little bit. But how far did they go up, Chris? And what did you make of what you saw from Tennessee?
I've moved Tennessee up to number 3 in my 134 rankings. I just think they've got 2 really solid wins now. NC State, they blew the doors off of them. And then you go to Oklahoma and you win comfortably. Like, the final line was 8 points I think they won by, but that game was never close, especially in the second half there. And so if you're Tennessee, like, they can win different ways. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from Tennessee right now compared to that Tennessee team of a few years ago that got up to number 1. They were going to score 50, 60 points every game, and they were going to give up a lot of points too. This team can win ugly. They can run the ball. They can rush the passer. And as long as Nico's taking care of the ball well enough, you can win those ugly games. And I think that's what makes Tennessee a really unique team this year, and that they feel a lot more well-rounded than the last couple. And I think that's a really good sign as you go into the SEC. You're going to have some clunkers. You're not going to be able to score 50 points every game. Can you win when you don't do that? And they did.
And I think I think they have the components to do that. Because, David, I thought you made an interesting point. in the past, yes, whenever Tennessee has matched up with teams that do match up with them talent for talent, it hasn't necessarily worked out for them. We know that. But the way that Josh Heupel is kind of building this team, having a really great front seven, a tremendous front four to start, then you start to develop the run game, which they've been running the ball pretty well. Granted, they only averaged about 2.9 per carry last night, but overall throughout the season, they've ran the ball incredibly, incredibly well. Now they've got to start at quarterback. So I will be interested to see how they do match up against these teams who have just as much talent on the roster, because it kind of seems like with that philosophy, kind of how they're building their program up, front seven, running game, star quarterback, it kind of seems like they're building their program to be able to handle those Alabamas, those Georgias, potentially Texas. That way, again, if it's an ugly game, hey, we can rely on being able to just run the football and try to control the ball. Or if we get in a shootout, we know Nico has the star power to keep us in a lot of big games. So I think that this win is incredibly important, again, because they didn't have to win big. They didn't have to be pretty. Like, they just did it the old fashioned way. They just took care of business. It wasn't really exciting. It wasn't really sexy. But, they're geared. It's starting to look like they're geared to be able to win and compete in any kind of game against any kind of team.
And that was, I think, Oklahoma, the irony here is this is a team that was looking forward to fixing their defense when Lincoln Riley left. They've done it. And now the offense is a mess, which was kind of their calling card for a long time. It's kind of an odd place to be. Elsewhere in the SEC, hard to believe, Oklahoma, now SEC country. Auburn, another team that's in a very precarious spot, largely because of the quarterback spot. They switched to Hank Brown, and it was not good. 24-14 loss to Arkansas. They've thrown 8 picks. That's 133rd nationally. That you turn it over at that rate. I mean, we're through 3-4 games this season. You just can't win that way. But most importantly, the biggest talking point of this game was not so much that they lost, but after the game, Hugh Freeze wasn't pleased with his quarterbacks and really a lot of players, and had this to say.
Unfortunately, this is what I know, and I know that there's people open, and I know that we're running the football, and we got to find a guy that won't throw it to the other team, and we got to find running backs that hold on to it. That's a huge play there. I mean, we're going in to score. I don't know, what was it, 7-0 then, or so it's 7-7, and our defense gets a stop, and who knows what happens. But the scheme is what most everybody in the country is running some sort of. But you've got to have good play at quarterback for sure to at whatever system you're going to choose.
Whew.
Laying it all out there.
Yeah. After the game, Dr. Bo Wallace, we haven't heard from him in a long time. He's now coaching high school ball in the Memphis area. He had a series of tweets, and I'll read the most relevant portion here. If you want to read the rest on Twitter, you can do that. But he said, we're approaching the point that he's thrown so many QBs under the bus that maybe nobody wants to play for him. His offense helped me tremendously, put numbers up when I blew my shoulder out. But why is it someone else's fault every time there's a loss? But when I win, or when there's a win, I watch the press conferences just to count how many times the word I is used. Appreciate what he did for me. My son wouldn't be playing for him, though. Wow. This goes a lot. This is kind of similar to what we were talking about with Shedeur. Yeah. This goes back to kind of what we were talking about with Shedeur, a few weeks ago, in that I don't know that he's necessarily wrong. The quarterback play has been bad, but I will also say that Auburn has the capability of having a well-funded collective. The transfer portal is out, and they didn't go after anybody. Cam Ward was on the market. You got outbid by Miami. You went and got Peyton Thorne from Michigan State. When they did that, they were striking out a little bit at the time, but people said
Peyton Thorne also kind of got run out of Michigan State too.
Exactly. He lost the job to Noah Kim in spring. So you get this guy, and everybody kind of knows, hey, not exactly that dude. And we're here a year and a half later, and I don't know that anybody is surprised by the outcome of Peyton Thorne's run at Auburn and getting benched now. But you've had your opportunities, and you're sitting here in year 2, and you still have quarterback issues, especially the transfer portal era. That's kind of the quarterback's fault. Damien, if you're a Auburn player and you see that clip, and maybe also you read what Bo Wallace has said, a lot of people are talking about this, and certainly Hugh Freeze has his detractors for a variety of reasons throughout his career. But if you're an Auburn player and you hear that, you see what Bill Wallace says, how does that land for you?
Well, again, I will say, and I don't know Bo Wallace personally. I don't know his situation with Hugh Freeze. So if I am misspeaking, forgive me. But that did sound a little bit personal. It sounded like there were some personal feelings attached to that statement. Getting directly into Hugh Freeze's comments, though, there's a thing that Nick Saban used to preach about all the time. That was having pride in your performance. As a quarterback, it is your job to put the offense in the best position to be successful. And the number one way that you can do that is by taking care of the football. Then I look at the running back situation because he mentioned, we need to have guys we can hand the ball to that won't give it to the other team. There's a famous saying that Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels used to say all the time. Whenever you carry the football, you're carrying the fortune of the entire team, the entire program in your hands. So I'm not necessarily bothered by Hugh Freeze's comments. To me, that's just being accountable to the players that are in your locker room. Yeah, he might not have gone out and done the best in the NIL and in the transfer portal. He might have gotten outbid for Cam Ward, but at the end of the day, he's the Auburn head football coach, and the guys that are in that locker room are the guys that he has to coach and the guys that he has to get the best out of on Saturdays. So if your quarterback is playing really, really bad and he's turning the ball over and giving it to the other team and taking possessions and points away from your team, that's got to be fixed and that's got to be addressed. And if apparently it's not being driven home enough in-house and in the locker room, because I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time that Hugh Freeze has told his quarterbacks that they need to play better. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you this isn't the first time that they've had a conversation about ball security, not putting the ball on the ground. I can guarantee you that. So I'm not really I haven't watched enough of Hugh Freeze's interviews to know if he is the kind of guy that only likes to take credit when they win. He likes to dish it out whenever they lose. I don't know about all that. But in the present time, he was addressing something that is inherently true. It's not like he's out there making false allegations or just like, we got bad players. They play like trash. Like, no, this quarterback's they're turning the ball over. And he said it. So, I compare this to Shedeur. Is a little bit different because this is the head coach. He has an obligation. He has a duty to get his players' attention and by whatever means necessary. So I'm not really that bothered by it. If I'm one of these players, if I'm one of the quarterbacks that have played for Auburn, if I'm the running back that fumbled, if I'm anybody who is not performing at the level, I'm looking at this as if I'm not doing my job, I'm going to get called out. Not by the fans, not by the head coach. And that's not a place you want to be. So again, tying it back to what I said earlier, you got to have pride in your performance. You got to be able to go out there as a quarterback, always put your offense in a position to be successful, take care of the ball. Again, if you're playing with guys who aren't superstar receivers, superstar backs, you can still take care of the ball and your team not look good and lose. But if you're out there just giving it away, giving points away, giving possessions away, that's a big deal. So to me, it seemed very on point, and it seemed kind of on par for what I would expect through my experience and some of the guys that I played for, but also as somebody who has pride in the way I went out and played and the way I showed up on the field and the performance that I put out there. I wouldn't be sitting here like, oh, my ego is shot. My coach called me out like, shoot. Yeah, he's probably right. I remember my third year in New England, I fumbled twice in the first 3 or 4 games. And I literally was just thinking to myself, how can I take care of the ball? How can I hold on to the ball? How can I be better? How can I stop putting my team in positions to stop putting the ball on the ground or to stop turning the ball over? What did I do? I didn't fumble the rest of the year. So it ultimately just comes down to the players on the field. You just got to go out there and perform.
Elsewhere in the Big 12, across the country, well, not that far actually. Elsewhere elsewhere. Yeah, sort of. Oklahoma State and Kansas State were on the short list of teams that we thought would challenge Utah to win the Big 12. Utah plays without Cam Rising in Stillwater, and they won anyway. That's a huge lost opportunity for Oklahoma State. If you told Oklahoma State you're going to get an opportunity to get a shot at Utah, and shocker, they're not going to have Cam Rising, you got to feel good about that. They've missed that opportunity. Kansas State, meanwhile, goes out to Provo with the 10:30 kickoff and gets absolutely stomped. The punt return was kind of the highlight there, but Oklahoma State, the offense falls apart. A ton of turnovers. Ultimately, when you look at this Oklahoma State team, these are sort of some soul-searching losses. You know, you lose to Isaac Wilson, but you have your own quarterback issues. Alan Bowman, not
Benched.
Superman, but was functional last year. Gets benched for Garrett Rangel. Benched in the second half. They lose the time of possession about 42 minutes to 70. There's to 17 minutes. It just seemed like Utah completely controlled this game, and defensively, we kind of know that Utah is who they are. They've been this last year when everyone on their team was injured. They were still locking teams down when they didn't have Brant Keith, when they didn't have Cam Rising, when they're rolling with the pig farmer at quarterback, they were still locking things down. They do the same thing to Oklahoma State. Now they're clearly in control. You look at the Big 12 standings, it is pretty upside down. Iowa State hasn't started conference play. They're the only team that people were kind of talking about as a contender in this league to start the season that doesn't already have a loss. K-State, meanwhile, is the second worst loss of the Kleiman era. They lost by 38 to Texas in 20. BYU puts 21 points off of the turnovers. And I think the biggest thing to me with Kansas State is not even really that they lost. I think it's two things. It's one, you lost by a lot, but two, Avery Johnson did not look like a guy that is ready to take the reins and lead a team to a Big 12 championship. And that's kind of the hope there. Obviously a very good athlete, but when we've seen from him, a lot of questionable accuracy, a lot of questionable decision-making. That was all on display in Provo, a tough place to play. Damien, we were talking last night. You said you were glad we can finally stop pretending that K-State is good.
Yes.
What did you see?
Because they're not good.
What did you see the Wildcats coming into this that was making you so skeptical?
Damien,
Yes.
you haven't seen Ubben play as Kansas State in college football.
No, I haven't. I have
Listen,
not.
I bring the boom.
I have not seen Avery Johnson with Ubben controlling the sticks. But what I have seen is Avery Johnson controlling Avery Johnson, and it just hasn't looked good. First of all, he hasn't even, getting specific with him, he hasn't even thrown for over 200 yards this season. I know he's athletic. I know he's great, but Kansas State is a team that has a good foundation. They're a team that has good culture. They're a team that has good genetic makeup. But they don't have the talent. They can't go out and be a good team if they're just going to be that. If you're going to rely just on that, that's not going to be good enough. They were able to do that for the first couple of weeks because they weren't really playing anybody. And to be honest with you, I don't really think BYU is that good. Yeah, granted, they looked unbelievable last night against Kansas State, but BYU is not a team that anybody has any type of. No teams fear BYU. No disrespect. None of us are sitting here talking about BYU at like we're tracking their movement. BYU is not a good team, and they made Kansas State look really, really bad. They made Avery Johnson look really, really bad, and it was a lot of between the ears stuff. Again, Ubben, you were talking about his decision making. There were a lot of times where a little bit of pressure, a little bit of the pocket breaks down, and then it's like he just doesn't see any of the defenders. It's like all he sees is receivers. Yeah, you get past the rush, but there's still 6 defenders back there playing defense, playing coverage. And to me, this Kansas State team, they just got off way too easy in the first couple of weeks of the season. I think that we confuse the pedigree of the organization of the program with actual talent. And to me, that just and I think that showed in a game in a tough environment where they were finally tested. I know when they played Tulane, it wasn't a big blowout win, but I felt like they were finally tested against BYU. And it wasn't like, oh, they were tested and, BYU found a way to win at home. Like they embarrassed Kansas State offensively, defensively, special teams. I mean, how do you let a guy muff a punt, reverse field, and then go all the way to the house? I mean, hell of a play by the kid. But come on, Kansas State. Like you're a team that we're talking about has Big 12 championship opportunity potential, playoff opportunity potential. I mean, if you're one of those teams, you don't go out and get beat like that. I understand there are teams that, not to cut you off, because I was going to say, I understand that there are teams that have lost and we're still talking about them in the playoff picture because they didn't go and get routed. They didn't go and look like Avery Johnson didn't look like a Power 5 starting quarterback to me last night. He didn't look like a guy that's going to go to the next level and be an efficient quarterback. There was no talent that jumps off the screen for this Kansas State team. So they're not good. It's not a good team that we're talking about right now.
It was a weird game. I mean, Kansas State outgained BYU by more than 120 yards.
They were in control for the first quarter and a half.
And Kansas State averaged 5.3 yards per rush. Like, whatever you think of Avery Johnson's passing, this is supposed to be a 3-headed rushing attack, and it wasn't bad. The Problem was 3 turnovers to none for BYU, the punt return touchdown, and Avery Johnson couldn't get a big play. They had 1 pass play longer than 9 yards. And so you don't have that explosiveness that you need. BYU, I know I just kind of, the numbers were kind of there, but this team has like figured it out. Like in the second year in the Big 12. Remember, they beat SMU this year. They held them to 15 points. The SMU team that just put up 60-something on TCU. And so now, like, Jay Hill, the defense coordinator there, former head coach at Weber State, a guy who may start to get some head coaching looks, depending on how the rest of the season goes. I got BYU up to number 16 in my 134 so far.
Seems high.
We'll see. We'll see how the rest of the season goes.
So, Chris, that's so high.
They did, but you got, if we have Kansas State as a top 20, top 15 team and they wipe the floor with them, I mean, that's kind of where BYU's got to slide up into there. With Oklahoma State, Utah, I'm not going to give up on Oklahoma State because these teams always seem to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But man, this was 22-3 in the fourth quarter. Like, this was not close until the very end. And Ollie Gordon's still not doing anything in the running game. You've benched Alan Bowman. It's just a real mess there. And if you're Utah, as long as Isaac Wilson, brother of Zach Wilson, has been like playing better the last couple of games, but he still had a couple of turnovers in this game. I don't know if Cam Rising is going to play or not. Nobody seems to ever know if he's ever going to return to the field or whatever. But the rest of the schedule is like doable. They finish with BYU, Iowa State, and UCF in 3 of their last 4 games, and that's probably where the Big Ten title race is going to come down to. But I mean, this team just keeps winning, man. The defense is unbelievable, completely suffocating, and they're what we thought. I've got Utah up into the top 10 now because of what they've done, and I can't look at anybody in the Big 12 and be like, that's going to be the team that knocks off Utah. There just isn't one of those teams.
Yeah, Oklahoma State had such an opportunity. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, I will say, I think the most concerning thing with me looking at K-State, because I kind of am not selling all my K-State stock yet either. I think the Big 12 champion might have 2 losses. But offensively, they don't seem like they know what they want to do with Avery Johnson's legs. Like, that has to be it has to be a huge weapon. And he's run a little bit, but it seems like they don't make that a threat a lot. It seems like they're making him into a drop back passer. If his read's not there,
it felt like they did against Arizona.
Yes.
Arizona, they started to use his legs.
He ran for 100 yards finally in that game.
We mentioned the offensive coordinator change at Oklahoma. Offensive coordinator change here too. Colin Klein's now at Texas A&M, and I don't know if they just they promoted from within, just like Oklahoma did. And
they also added Matt Wells.
How to take advantage? They haven't figured out how to take advantage of this star young quarterback they have, just like Oklahoma.
And I think that low key also their receiver group is not great. No, they don't have a ton of playmakers out there, and that has been an issue. If guys are going to, but again, this goes back to play design. This goes back to your offensive identity. If you've got DJ Giddens, you've got Dylan Edwards, you've got Avery Johnson. Those are 3 really, really good players. That has to be that has to be your whole offense. And you run to pass. It doesn't seem like they're necessarily running to pass a lot, and it seems like they've got Avery Johnson stuck in this middle ground where you don't want to run him into the ground.
It's getting him exposed as a quarterback. That's what that was kind of what I was getting at is, I feel like we've kind of set this conversation up perfectly. They're not putting him in the best position. And then it makes him just look bad because whenever he turns into just a pocket passer, just a stand in the pocket style quarterback, he's not good at that. And that shows.
Yeah. I think one of the things I took away from this weekend, a lot of schools are Iowa, and they need to realize that they are Iowa. Oklahoma is one of them. Kansas State is one of them. Michigan is one of them, who we'll get to soon. Like, you just don't have the quarterback play you want to, and you can run the ball, so maybe that's what needs to be your entire offense.
Well, these are not the only teams that had some meltdowns on Saturday. Chris, Virginia Tech loses to Rutgers 26-23. The funny thing about this, I will say, Chris, Virginia Tech, probably the hottest dark horse to make the playoff in the preseason. I was maybe on that train a little bit. Still undefeated in ACC play, Chris. They lose to Vanderbilt. They lose to Rutgers. Week. What did you make of Virginia Tech? Is there any hope that this might be a team that turns it around and maybe is a factor in the ACC race?
I mean, speak like Kansas State. Like, this was a popular dark horse pick. I think they were one of my dark horse picks. Is the way they finished last season. The doubters said, "Hey, they only beat up on bad teams last year." Well, this year they've lost to Vanderbilt and Rutgers. So that doesn't bode well. And you've got Miami next on the road on Friday night. Now, Rutgers is solid. Rutgers is a real solid program now. Vanderbilt, maybe. But, like, you can't trust this Virginia Tech team. You thought you would turn the corner under Brent Pry. You haven't. You've got Miami next. You've got Stanford, who looks improved. You've got Boston College, who's improved coming up. You've got Georgia Tech after that, who's improved. Like, this is make or break time now that you're moving into conference play. You can get past those losses, but there's nothing I've seen from this team so far that's going to make me confident. Did you see the safety, by the way? Kyron Drones' safety.
No, I missed.
Game.
Oh, wait, yes,
tackled.
I did see that. Yes.
Threw it backwards out of the end zone.
He almost won Criesman of the weekend, for sure.
That just kind of sums up where things are at right
competition for the funniest safety of all time.
I thought the worst part about that safety, the play itself was bad. It was funny, but the fact that Kyron Jones actually acted hurt afterwards and he laid there and molded over my head, like, get up. You outdid Dan Orlovsky. Just get up, wear it.
It's like
get back.
It's like missing a wide open shot or a layup and pickup. Like, man, my hand. Right.
And you know how I know he did that? Because I've done that before. I had like a 70-yard run when I was at Bama one time, and I got hawked. It was against Citadel, and I literally banged my head on the ground, and I just laid there and pretended for a second. I was like, I just got hawked. I'm embarrassed as hell. The trainers came running off on the field. I was like, nah, just give me a second. I'll be straight. But I saw that Kyron Jones. I know that move. I know that.
In the Big 12, we were worried about these guys coming in, and Kansas continuing its run as one of the most disappointing teams of this season. There's a rain delay. It was a weird game. I didn't get to see a lot of the last few minutes of this because I don't even know what network they pushed it onto after the delay. I don't know how long this delay was. It was quite a while. But Kansas was up double digits. They give up back-to-back touchdown drives, lose 32-28. Jalen Daniels continuing to be a turnover machine through another pick early in that game. Fumbled inside the 40 with 8 seconds left. Damien, are you selling all of your KU stock?
Sold.
All right.
Gone. Wipe my hands with it. And honestly, I hate to say it, but Jalen Daniels, you're the reason why. You can't take care of the ball. You can't win.
It's pretty simple. We had another big game on Saturday. USC goes to the Big House. First time they've played each other since the 2007 Rose Bowl. And Michigan goes down, scores in the last minute. Kalel Mullings busted a long run to ignite this drive. And we had a 4th and goal on the goal line. And I was sitting there watching this because USC was flirting with a goal line stand. And my thought was, for narrative's sake, if USC gets a goal line stop here against Michigan, it's going to feel like the earth has tilted on its axis. Like, imagine if a year ago you said, yeah, Michigan, they got USC inside the 5 and USC just stuffed them on the goal line. This would be sort of a passing of the torch to these two programs. Alas, it was not to be. They just run power, get in there, score a touchdown, and they beat USC with 32 yards passing from our guy, Alex Orji. Impressive from USC to get off the mat here. But, Chris, you've seen Michigan in person. Did this game change anything about what you see for Michigan, what lies ahead for them in the Big Ten race the rest of this season?
No, but it's one that you really, that's like a program, responding win. You don't want to have 2 losses in September coming off the national championship, all the questions you have a quarterback and what's going to be the future and whatnot. And so too, they were up 14-0 in this game and pounding USC. And we thought that was going to be it. Credit to USC for fighting back and getting in this game.
Yeah.
But with Michigan, it's a big win, but I think it's pretty clear the ceiling on this team is very low. I was very surprised going to the all Alex Orji offense that we didn't get a more creative run game, whether that was misdirections and different kinds of stuff. It was mostly the same stuff we've seen, quarterback draws or some read options and some handoffs, and that was it. And USC eventually figured that out in the second half, and that's why they were able to make that comeback. Michigan had fewer than 20 yards of offense in the second half until that final drive. So, it's not sustainable, but it's a win for Michigan where like you can pull your hand off the panic button for now and understand that most teams you play in the Big Ten are not going to be at that talent level. And this still looks like a team that can get to, 8-9 wins comfortably.
The 63-yard run from Mullings they're basically running 2-minute drill late in that game. And I'm thinking they haven't been able to throw the ball all game. Mullings busts this huge run, drags a defender who's got him wrapped around the waist, stomps him. He keeps on going, gets inside the 10. That was one low key, probably the best play of the entire day because it did flip the game. But we talked about these backs on Thursday's show, and it seems like Michigan has figured out, hey, Khalil Mullings is our guy. Donovan Edwards is a good back. Damien, when you looked at these two guys and the way that they kind of influenced the fortunes of this game, what stood out to you about this Michigan running attack in a game where they had to have it and delivered?
Well, they both contributed. And again, let's not understate the fact that Donovan Edwards is still a good back, and he can definitely contribute. He had a 40-yard touchdown run. That helps your team win. But ultimately, Khalil Mullings is RB1, and he really took the game over on the last drive of the game. Like you said, not only the 63-yard run was absolutely the play of the day across college football because that type of undeniable effort, that's 100%. And without you even thinking it, that is your competitive self responding in a way of saying, I am putting this game on my shoulders come hell or high water. No matter what happens, I am not going to be denied. And I'm telling you, he didn't line up in the backfield to say, once I touch this, no matter what happens, I'm not getting tackled. But it's just something that comes, it's your competitive nature. It's that fight or flight response. And what was even more impressive to me was, again, just the determination and the will to not be denied, because that power on fourth down was not clean. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't perfect. It was money. There was a split second where I didn't know if he was going to get in or not. But again, just that undeniable effort, that undeniable passion to just get in the end zone and ultimately get this program, get your hand off the panic button, win for your team. So with Alex Orji, it's hard because, like Chris said, they're not very creative with him. They don't really do a lot of things that are advantageous for Alex Orji. They don't do a lot of things that let him just really just break free. It's all very vanilla. But in a game like this, which it's not sustainable, but in a game like this, you can just depend on a guy like Khalil Mullings because he has proven that he is the dominant back for Michigan. He's one of the dominant backs in college football right now, honestly, on the trajectory that he's at. So, there's a lot of things still for Michigan to figure out, but what they can rest assured and lay their head on their pillow at night and know is that Khalil Mullings is a dude. And he is a guy that if the game is ugly, if you're behind, if you're ahead, you can put the ball in this guy's hands and you will get productive results.
I think I still don't buy that they have a lot of, like what Chris was saying, that there's a lot of ceiling for this team. But what you do have with Alex Orji thus far is you stop turning the ball over, which was giving them so many issues earlier. And once you do that, you have the kind of defense that Michigan has. They had a defensive score from Will Johnson, awesome play from him, and you have a running game. Even if you don't have a passing game, you don't have true balance, you're still going to be able to win some games. I think you're going to have trouble when they play teams of Texas's caliber, but we could get to November where Michigan is still a factor.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Well, actually, no. I'm going to say it because I think this is a good point because, again, I feel like Michigan's defense is playing a little bit better each week. I feel like they're getting a little bit better.
They pressured Miller. They pressured Miller. They made Miller almost 50% of his dropbacks.
Right. They made him look like a different Miller Moss than we've seen the first couple of weeks. So again, you take this defense and they get better and they get better. So by the end of the season, right around the Big Ten championship, if their defense is finally figured out and they're playing at a high level, you keep Alex Orji from just turning the ball over. You get a little bit more expansive with your package for him and how you're going to run him. And then you've got Khalil Mullings, who is, like I said, proven to be a dude. You got Donovan Edwards, who is still a good back, who has proved that he can contribute. They might be able to hold up against some of these good teams. They might be able to. They might be able to if they just keep on the same trajectory. I felt like with Michigan, it was all about if you find an identity and you stick with it, then you can build on it. What they showed against USC was good enough to win, so that they have enough to build off of.
Friday night in the Big Ten, Illinois goes to Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska for the 400th consecutive sellout, going back to 1964. Awesome stuff. We're not going to get into the maybe questionable math of that, but listen, 400 sellouts regardless of all the shenanigans, still impressive. Nebraska fans are great. And Nebraska, no.
Still Nebraska. They're still
We've been
Nebraska.
talking about the defrosting process for quite some time. Chris, you tweeted out Nebraska's 3-18 in one-score games at the start of 2021, which seems impossible. Mitch Sherman, our Nebraska writer, noted that Nebraska, especially now, they've kept the streak going. Their last 8 overtime games since 2014, they have not scored in overtime.
How is that possible?
I don't know.
You
If you
started
get the ball at the
25-yard line.
25. Yeah.
Here's where I'm at on this, though. And this is where I think actually Nebraska's going to be okay. In a lot of those one-score losses, I would say the vast majority of them, Nebraska was not the better team. I came away from this thinking Nebraska was a better team than Illinois. They just didn't make the plays late, melted down in overtime, gave up some plays late. It was not resounding, but I still like what I saw from Nebraska. You know, when you go through the first half, you know, that looked like an 8-9 win team to me, especially when you look at their future schedule. Well, you cough up wins like this, that number shrinks in a hurry, but I'm still in on Nebraska. Like, they're definitely going to go to a bowl game. They're definitely going to be a factor. They're definitely going to be a tough team to beat. And Dylan Raiola adds a ceiling to them that is really impressive. And we've seen him make some throws, make some reads, and process in a way that makes you very encouraged for his future. He looks like a guy that is going to be what people say he was going to be, a 5-star quarterback and a guy that can change a program. But then over time, you see the freshmen come out. They got 2 terrible sacks to get them
like
super far.
It was like 3rd and 42 or something.
Something like that. Something like that. Just
wild.
plays you can't make unless you're Tua, and you just can't.
right.
You just can't do that. And on the other side of it, though, Illinois 4-0 for the first time under Brett Bielema. 3-4 against ranked teams since 2021. They'll go to Penn State next. We're going to find out real quick how good Illinois is. Chris, when you looked at this game and sort of 2 top 25 teams, I'm not sure I buy that either of these are 2 of the 25 best teams in the country.
I do.
Where did they go in your...
Yeah, you got to find somebody to fill out the bottom of your top 25 every year, and you kind of don't realize that the bottom is way different than the top. My takeaway from this game, I was so impressed with how hard Illinois plays. That is a team that plays their ass off. Defensively, they tackle well. Offensively, they take care of the ball. This team they're I think 5th in the country in takeaways. Like, they are just playing sound football. I was not high on Illinois coming into this year. I thought they might be the worst team in the Big Ten. They lost a lot of good some good players off of last year's team. Didn't add a whole ton, but they've just improved across the board. And like, a lot of the talk after this game was about Nebraska and what they did. And yeah, Nebraska kind of probably threw the game away at the end with some of those.
They did, but that's okay.
but Illinois had put itself in position to take advantage of those, and they didn't make those mistakes. And so Illinois 4-0. I mean, they're 3-4 against ranked teams under Brett Bielema since 2021. They're 4-0 for the first time under him. Like, this just feels like another one of those overachieving Brett Bielema years. Remember, a couple years ago, they were in like Big Ten contention going into like down the stretch in November. And I'm not saying this team will do that, but this is a team that, like, if you just play solid ball and don't make mistakes, somebody else will. And you scoop up those wins when you can get them. So shout out Illinois. That team plays hard, man.
Where'd you put them in your Athletic 134, Chris?
I've got Illinois. Let's see. I've got Illinois up to 18 in my rankings this week. Just behind Clemson. They're 4-0, and they just beat what was then a top 25 team on the road. Kansas is not what we thought Kansas was, but that was another solid win for them, and Illinois is just taking care of business.
I want to see. I think we're going to learn a lot about them and Penn State this week. I think that's going to be a good game. Elsewhere in the moving on to the ACC, Louisville beats Georgia Tech. I'm still opting out of the Louisville conversation. I want to see more. I think last year they get all the way to the ACC championship, and people are still like, but is this team actually good? Because their schedule is so easy. We just haven't seen, like, Louisville takes care of business and doesn't really impress you. They've done this for 2 years now under Jeff Brom.
It's Louisville.
It's fun to say Louisville. Like, it's more fun to just say coming out of your mouth.
I'm lost because I in my
this is gonna be a problem all year.
It is. This is what happens when you have a native Kentuckian on the show. This is what happens.
And proud.
Damien, when you look at Louisville, I think I was doing my bubble watch today. I think they're clearly the third best team in the ACC. What does that mean? I don't really know. But what are the odds you could see them challenging Clemson or Miami and sneaking into Charlotte and playing for an ACC title?
I gotta see more. I really just haven't seen. They haven't played anybody. And granted, Georgia Tech is improved and they're good, but I think that like we're forgetting they looked a lot better against Florida State than they have throughout the last.
Yeah.
Weeks. Granted, they've still looked improved and like a better team. They look like a Brent Key coach team. They play well. They're good in the trenches. Haynes King has been playing pretty well. But at the same time, again, this Georgia Tech team isn't, they're not world beaters. This isn't a really, really impressive win to me. So I'm still on the fence of, I just don't know enough about Louisville.
Yeah,
they look good on paper. They look good on film, but I think that that's just because they're not really playing any talent. So to say that they're going to challenge the upper echelon of the ACC, I'm not saying it's not possible. But again, I think I just need to see more. I feel like everybody else needs to see more, unless you're a Louisville fan. But I feel like you can't really. There's not a good way to gauge this Louisville team right now.
And I think part of the Louisville conversation
Louisville.
is
just say Louisville, Louisville.
Louisville, yeah. As part of this conversation, I will say is I am starting to kind of believe, sort of maybe, in both Clemson and Miami. Chris, where do you have Louisville in your rankings?
So I've been getting a lot of heat from Louisville fans for not having them in my top 25. And my explanation was you had only played Jacksonville State and Austin Peay, So you play somebody, you play Georgia Tech, and you win. I've got Louisville up to number 23 in my rankings. That game against Georgia Tech, that was a lot closer than the final score. There was like a blocked field goal at the end. That made it that difference. Haynes King passed for 312 yards in that game. But Louisville defended the run really well. So the defense was very hit and miss. Tyler Shuck played really, really well. 13 for 19, 269 yards. But Louisville couldn't really run the ball. So just kind of a mixed bag of a game. They won. They covered the 10.5 point spread. So it's a start. Still need to see more until we fully believe in Louisville. But you did what you needed to do.
A few other teams that had some performances that show some promise. Clemson beats NC State 59-35. It was 59-14 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I led my bubble watch today talking about Clemson back. Clemson might be back. We'll see. Time will tell.
They're back in ACC contention.
Yes. It's a start. It's a start.
But I still want to maybe more than ACC contention. I'm starting. I can feel it bubbling up, Chris. I'm starting to believe
you're gonna get let down.
The vibes are good. The vibes are good around there. Like
you watch them there.
This was the game I watched. I watched this game. This is the first game I watched in that noon window. And Clemson was just boom, 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 touchdown. Everybody's happy. Everybody's excited. That was just the exact type of start you want. Kate Klubnik, Clemson needs to use his legs a bit more. He had a 55-yard touchdown run in this game. Take advantage of that. But he seems to be much more comfortable and decisive now. Georgia's Georgia. It's week 1. It happens. But Clemson, they're kind of on their way back.
They hadn't scored offensively the last 3 years. It's been a disaster. They haven't scored 40 points. They did it one time last year. They hit the 50-point mark in an ACC game with 9 minutes left in the third quarter. The offense looks free. Phil Moffitt averaging 13 yards a carry the last 2 games. That would probably break your record, Damon. I got to say.
Long season.
Yeah. The last 2 games, Cade Klubnik completing 80% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, no picks. The competition is going to get harder, but Clemson has not really thrived in these games. And so the fact that they're able to just start suddenly scoring at will in games that they have not done that in the past, I'm throwing up the red flag on Clemson. We might have written them off a little too quickly. BC gets the job done against Michigan State. That was kind of a back and forth game, but the Eagles win in the Wells Crowther game. Always great to see them get the win in the red bandana game. That's always a cool event. One of the better traditions
quick
in college
on that.
football.
Yeah, Aiden Childs, Michigan State quarterback, one of the more exciting players in the sport, and I mean that in a good and bad way. As in, he's going to happen when he's going to make an unbelievable play, and then he's going to throw in. I think he had 3 interceptions in this game. He's been a turnover machine, but he's also making some really, really good plays. And Michigan State could have won this game. They had a couple of bad mistakes at the end. They're 3-1 going into kind of a gauntlet of a conference schedule to start. But there's reason for optimism in Michigan State. You just got to cut down on the turnovers, which is a theme for like every team that's struggling in college football right now. Take care of the ball. It's like so important.
How many times do I have to say it? The number one statistic, other than points, the number one statistic that is correlated to winning and losing is turnovers. Thank you for validating. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
Pitt scores 73 against Youngstown State. I know it's Youngstown State, but here's the deal. Pitt 87th last year in offensive yards per play. They bring in Cade Bell, go a little up tempo. I like what we're seeing from Pitt. Eli Holstein's playing well. They're now eighth in offensive yards per play through the first 4 weeks of the season. Most points in program history as well. Pitt played a lot of Youngstown States. They've never scored 73. So encouraging. We'll see what Pitt is or isn't. These things are revealed through time. I'm keeping an eye on Pitt. We're watching. Again, if you have not left us a voicemail, you should do that. We always love hearing from you guys. We try to feature them in the show. So if you have not left us a voicemail before, you should start making that part of your game day routine or your Sunday routine, whatever that looks like. 316-462-9852. We heard from Sad Husker Nate, who is taking out his Nebraska pain out on an old rival, watching Missouri go toe-to-toe with Vanderbilt. Sad Husker Nate, what do you got for us?
Dave, Chris, Damien, this is Sad Husker Nate. You're familiar. I wasn't sad, but I'm sad again. But this phone call is not about my Huskers disappointing me. I'm pretty used to that at this point. Again, I live in New Mexico. I'm a Huskers fan. But this phone call is about Missouri. When are you guys going to admit that Missouri is not just overrated, they're realistically not a top 25 team, and they're just kind of coasting by on the fact that they have that SEC logo? They're a joke. Nebraska would beat Missouri. I can say that as a Huskers fan, and confidently say that. Diego should have won that game. He deserves better. Missouri's garbage. Boys, good to hear from you. Good to talk to you.
Wow.
All right, so here's the deal. I'll defend Missouri's honor here.
You go. You're the alone.
I am very skeptical in Missouri as a real playoff team. I think we need to see a little bit more. Offensively, they haven't been as good as you would like to see from them. But defensively, despite losing a lot on the defensive line, they've been pretty strong. And I think the one thing, I think we're underrating Vandy a little bit, famous last words, but you add, defensively what they've been able to do with Clark Lee and obviously Jerry Kill, you add Diego Pavia. They're a tough matchup for a lot of teams, and they're using Pavia's legs in a really good way. When you watch him run around, he's giving defenses headaches. So I don't think they're going to be taking a ton of beatings in the SEC this year. But also, Missouri has the schedule right now where just take care of business. You can win 9, 10, 11 games and be sniffing around the playoff. So they're definitely one of the top 25 teams. They would definitely beat Nebraska. Is Missouri going to prove themselves as a top 4 or 5 team in the SEC? I am skeptical of that. So if you say they're not in the top 15, they're not a playoff contender, I think that's probably a fair take. We've seen them look a little shaky against BC, a little shaky, obviously, against Vanderbilt, but still a pretty good team. They still, offensively, the passing game has not been what we had thought they might be with Brady Cook and obviously Luther Burden and Theo Weiss and those receivers. And so we'll see. Chris, am I being too nice to Mizzou?
They just look slow to me, for whatever reason. And like Vanderbilt, was able to match up with them athletically, and that was not something I was expecting in this game. Missouri also missed a bunch of field goals in regulation, so it may not have gotten to overtime anyway. But this is 2 weeks in a row. Against Boston College, they fall behind early. They're not starting games very well. I don't know what exactly is going on here. I don't know if they're just playing with their food because of that schedule. Because here's who they have the rest of the year: Texas A&M, UMass, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas. There's only one game on there I say they're definitely losing. It's Alabama. But this team could still go 10-2 with that schedule and be right there in that playoff mix. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those situations where at the end of the year we're going to be like Missouri, 10-2 SEC team, but kind of SEC schedule.
What have you done? That's a fair question. Our next listener, our next voicemail, folks. I feel like we're going to be talking about some moral victories here, but let's see. What do we got from Sydney?
Hello, my name is Sydney, and I am calling from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I just wanted to say that I believe Bowling Green is going to win the MAC this year. I really believe they are the best team in the conference after playing very tightly with Penn State and Texas A&M. So I believe they will win the MAC championship up there in Detroit, and I think they will make the college football playoff. Thank you very much. I hope you have a nice day.
This is not the craziest take. I think I see some here. Miami was the preseason favorite in this league, and their offense has looked not good at all. Obviously, a tough schedule to start, but they haven't looked like really. They lose to Northwestern, who is obviously not a great team. Cincinnati, a game that I thought they had a chance to win, they lose that game. Notre Dame, they put up no fight yesterday. They put up 3 points on the board. So Miami seems like a team that I'm not going to fully write them off, but they're not going to. I don't think they're going to win this conference. So you look around, and especially after the game, the day that folks had yesterday, where Northern Illinois disappoints in their first game back, Toledo loses on the road to a good Western Kentucky team. I've been beating the Western Kentucky drum all season, that I still think they're like a functional G5 team. Mm-hmm. So I can see it. You look around, I think Toledo to me looks like maybe still the best team, but if I had to pick the MAC title right now, I'd probably say Toledo, Bowling Green. Chris, are you on board?
Look at Ubben breaking down the MAC title race on here. I love it. I love that. I love that. Here's the thing to know about Bowling Green. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr. is tearing it up right now. Penn State, 11 catches, 137 yards and a touchdown. Texas A&M, 8 catches, 145 yards and a touchdown. He's a junior, 6'4", 230. This guy is like coming out of nowhere to have an unbelievable year for Bowling Green right now. So keep an eye on that name. And as kind of MAC play goes on, if you're catching a MACtion game on a Tuesday or Wednesday and you're watching Bowling Green, look for Harold Fannin Jr. because that tight end, that guy's a dude right now.
Good player. Let's get to our locks of the week. We'll start with the bad news. Chris, you came out of the game
with the good news.
Yeah, we're gonna start with the locks as a whole were bad news. Your lock of the week,
not as a whole. Mine hit. It was bad for you guys.
Chris,
let the record show that.
Tennessee -7. That was never in doubt. Great pick by you. I was very certain that Tennessee was going to win this game and cover, but it was one of those games where you're so sure that you're like, am I missing something here? Like, I felt like Tennessee was clearly a much better team than Oklahoma.
I mean, it ended up sort of being close, but
not really. Not really. Yeah, not really. Damien, you had Ohio State -39.5. They were sniffing around. They got hot late. Didn't quite.
Ohio State plays with their food too much.
Yeah,
they play with their food way too much, and Ohio State is notorious for that. And granted, they got all these great players and all these things, but for Ryan Day to sit here and talk about how important style points are and how every rep matters, every game matters, we got to impress the committee. I don't see it because it's always a slow start. They're relying on big plays, Quinshon Judkins, Jeremiah Smith, Travion Henderson. It just they won. They're looking okay, and eventually they start to look like the Ohio State team. But when you talk about the top teams and the best teams in the country, not necessarily right now, but when we're talking about the playoffs, you're not going to be able to beat a Texas or a Georgia, an Alabama team like that if you come out and expect to play with your food for a little bit and like, oh, okay, well, Jeremiah's going to bust one at some point. Quinshon's going to get loose at some point. So
you had Ohio State covering 39.5. They won by 35.
It was close.
Also, Ohio State kicked 3 kickoffs out of bounds and had to change who's doing the kickoff. So keep an eye on that.
Interesting. I'm going to defend my miss. Okay, so here's the deal. I had Baylor and Colorado under 51.5 as my lock, and they was 69 total points. But let's walk this through. First of all, Monterey Baldwin had one of the craziest catches you're ever going to see. We had a kick return for a touchdown. And if you saw the Omarion Miller touchdown, he gets tackled, somehow gets up, scores. It was ridiculous. And then we have the Hail Mary. It wasn't even
close, man.
It was closer than the score indicated, Chris. It was closer than the score indicated. Anyway, I was still on the right side of that. I'm still feeling good about that.
What are you talking about?
It was closer than the score indicated. Anybody who watched the game, and I watched the game, you'll tell
it hit over by 17 points.
In overtime with a Hail Mary, Chris.
It was one score in overtime.
I'm right on this. Okay. Our trust fall
What?
picks. Chris, you gave Damien Clemson -16. They got that one by a long shot. Damien, you gave me Florida -6. That was the trustiest trust fall pick of
It was. It was. It
and
was.
that hit pretty solidly. It was a little nervy, a little bit, but Florida was like clearly 6 points better than Mississippi State, who is not very good. And Chris, we were together in the Big Ten. Indiana, wagon, Sig Nasty, dropping bombs still again. They hammered Charlotte, as one would expect. Easily covered the 28.5 in that game. All right, it's time for our Heismans and Criesmans of the week. We got to be fast here. Chris, who is your Heisman of the week?
James Madison, defensive back Terrence Spence. 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown, and a blocked punt in a 70-50 win over North Carolina. I have no idea how this game happened.
Yeah, that was the craziest game of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
James Madison had not even been very good this season.
No.
They had scored 43 points through 2 games. They beat Gardner-Webb 13-9. Now they're putting 70 up on North Carolina. North Carolina's defense had been pretty good. They hadn't allowed more than 20 points in a game with Jeff Collins as the DC. This game was just insane for a boatload of reasons. James Madison quarterback Alonzo Barnett, backup last year, 7 total touchdowns. First time in Sun Belt history. It was so bizarre that Mac Brown is like contemplating retirement after this game.
They broke
Mac. He reportedly had said he would step down in the locker room if players felt he should. He later told ESPN that he's not, that he's back at work on Monday. So, Mac Brown's been hanging around for a while, and every year people are wondering if he's going to retire. Obviously, we have to see where the rest of the season goes, but it does feel like we're kind of at the end of the road. But that was just a bizarre game. But the Heisman goes to Terrence Spence, James Madison. Awesome game.
My Heisman of the week is, I think, the actual Heisman frontrunner at this point. Travis Hunter has his 5th 100-yard receiving game in a row. And as an incredible, if you missed it, the one tackle for loss looked like you shot out of a cannon. It was awesome. And most importantly, the game deciding forced fumble that results in a touchback in overtime and spilled the fans onto the field before they reviewed it. Travis Hunter is unbelievable. He had another really nice catch when he was being interfered with on a downfield ball. Damien, he was a little upset earlier in the game that they weren't getting the ball. I did see a little bit of that from him. But
at least he made up for it.
Yeah, when you catch everything thrown your way, like, he's unbelievable. And I don't want to belabor the point because I like spreading the love around, but I am curious what would happen if we got to see Travis Hunter on like a national championship contender, because he is he is that dude. And I we'll see. I won't get on a Heisman voters rant. I am very skeptical that the Heisman voting electorate, who I despise, will actually take into account if Colorado is 6-6, Travis Hunter, if he'll really get considered votes or be a finalist.
My concern, I wonder with Travis Hunter, do you think there could be like voter backlash to the Deion hype that they like don't vote for because they think Colorado's overhyped and they don't understand how good Travis Hunter is?
Maybe. I just don't know how you can watch Colorado play and watch Travis Hunter and not be like, that guy's unbelievable. Like, whether or not you think he's
regardless of anything.
Good news. Colorado's got the big noon game this week with the
people watch them regardless. People pay attention.
Watch
so that probably helps more than anything else. But maybe I could see it. Damien, who's your Heisman of the week?
Travis Hunter. He's the best player in college football. It's not even close. I mean, I had a conversation this weekend in studio. We were talking about, is Travis Hunter a top 10 athlete in the sport of college football all time? And I said, a very interesting question, right? We're talking about the likes of Barry Sanders. There's a list that was created by
Jackson.
Yeah, we're thinking
Chris
Cam
Campbell.
Newton. Yeah, we're thinking a lot. Reggie Bush was somebody that was on that list, right? And so I said, I need to see more. I need to see something else. Watching the way that he bit the ball, the way he made literally a game-saving tackle, and to have the wherewithal to know corners have I shouldn't say have a misconception, because corners don't like to tackle. They don't get paid to tackle. So they don't tackle, but he's like, I'm a guy. No, I tackle. I hit people. I cause turnovers. I've seen enough. I'm ready to start having the conversation. Is he top 5 of all time?
Interesting.
By the way, the year that Charles Woodson won the Heisman Trophy, the only defensive player to do it, two-way player, he had 11 catches in that season for 231 yards.
Not a
2
real
touchdowns.
receiver.
Right. Yeah. Nah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say though.
Go ahead, Damien.
Just for the sake of being different, though, I did say Travis Hunter. If I had to give out another Heisman though for this weekend, I think Cam Ward looks spectacular.
Yeah.
I think he played. It looks like he's playing NCAA on rookie. I mean, 400 yards, 4 or 5. I can't remember 4 or 5 touchdowns. I mean, and it all just looks very effortless. It looks like he always makes the right read. He's got all the throwing mechanics. He's got the arm. He's got the legs. He makes the right play, and he does it looking smooth as butter. Like he's like a hot knife through butter, man. That kid is good, and not only is he good, but he makes Miami really good.
Yeah, I think last year, because he had such stellar interceptions and highlights, Travis Hunter was really overrated as a cover man last year. If you looked at his actual numbers in coverage, he was like outside of the top 70 in corners. But this year, it's been very, very different. He's always been an elite receiver since we've seen him, and he's been that again this season. But his coverage skills and his coverage numbers have really borne out that he is turned into a lockdown corner this year. And we'll see as they get into to conference play and face better offenses and face better receivers. But he's really, really improved in coverage this year, and I think that means a lot. Chris, who is your Criesman of the week?
My Criesman of the week is TCU. Now, there's a few things going on here. One,
a lot. We got to get to a lot here. Let's kill it.
TCU has canceled the series with SMU. They did it, I think, last year. The series only goes to 2025. TCU instead wanted to play power conference teams, get some home games, yada, yada, instead of that Dallas-Fort Worth long-time iron skillet rivalry with SMU. So they cancel the game. Then they lose the game this week, giving up, I think, 66 points and a blowout loss to an SMU team that was having trouble scoring and moving the ball. There were, I think, multiple defensive scores in that game.
4 non-offensive touchdowns, but we'll go on.
But also, going into the game, TCU was talking smack that this game was on the CW, which is part of the ACC's TV deal. And they did a commercial, or they did like a This Is Sports Center commercial and made fun of it being on the CW. So they go out, lose the game. Sonny Dykes, the TCU head coach, the former SMU head coach, gets ejected at the beginning of the second half because a kick return touchdown is called back on a hold. Not a great call. But if you know Sonny, Sonny Dykes blows up so much that he gets an unsportsmanlike penalty, then a play later, gets another one, he gets ejected from the game. And SMU fans who despise Sonny Dykes, even though he kind of brought that program back, he left for TCU. They're waving goodbye to him. He's like fist pumping all this kind of stuff. And then the ACC after the game like talks trash back to TCU about the game being on the CW, and they make a CW joke back at them. So like just an unbelievable fall flat on your face moment for TCU, talking a lot of smack to the school, to the TV network when you didn't need to be doing that. And then you lose in a pretty embarrassing fashion. So TCU Criesman of the week.
One Tree Hill, 4 non-offensive turnovers, drowning in Dawson's Creek. Shout out to TCU. My Criesman of the week is all of our G5 darlings. Fellas, what are we doing? Yeah. Last week, listen, the G5 playoff spot was wide open for good reason. We had a bunch of really compelling candidates. And then all of a sudden, we don't. Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame their next time out, loses to Buffalo. And Memphis beats Florida State next time out, gets run over. 365 rushing yards from Navy, 56-44 loss. And then App State, a team that we thought could be kind of in the mix, has been one of the more disappointing teams in the country. They get smacked by South Alabama. Now, all of a sudden, this race
Fluff Bothwell, by the way. Fluff Bothwell, the running back at South Alabama.
South Alabama getting after it. Yes, it is. And it's pretty messy. Toledo beats Mississippi State last week. Also, their next time out, they cough up a lead. Both, by the way, Toledo and Northern Illinois had 11-point leads. Cough them up. Lose to Western Kentucky on the road. A sad state of affairs in the G5. Damien, or Chris, who's the top-ranked G5 team for you now?
I've got UNLV right now, but that's just because they were kind of already there and they were off this week. I think Boise State's right behind them. They should have beaten, they almost beat Oregon, so that was a close game. I guess James Madison's moving up because of that win, even though
they're in there.
And then Liberty is still floating around there. They have
not played well.
They have not played well.
They have not played well.
but they are undefeated, and if we may have to have the undefeated Liberty conversation once again. We do have Liberty.
Yeah, I hope Liberty saves us from having, because I don't want them to go undefeated and get left out of the playoff. But they were also in a 17-0 hole in Eastern Carolina and climbed out. I think they've trailed in like at least 2 or 3 of their games this year. It's not been good.
They may, but they may run over App State when they play here pretty soon.
Also, Chris, before we get to Damien's Criesman, Army, Navy, both undefeated. Dude. They could be 4-0 for the first time since literally World War II, and they are in the mix for the G5. They are in the mix. We're going to see. There's a lot of
remember, the Army-Navy game does not apply to the playoff.
Yes.
Playoff will be decided before then. It's a non-conference game, but Navy's 3-0. They've scored more points through 3 games than they have since literally World War I, 1918. So Navy, they may be turning a corner. Army looks real solid. Like
the troops are balling, basically. Damien, who's your Criesman of the week?
Oh man, Dominic Richardson, running back, Baylor. Oh man,
tough way to go.
Yeah. You know, and I'm gonna flip the script here for a second because
it was raining, Damien. It was raining.
It was, and
fumbled the ball to lose the game.
I'm gonna flip the script here because we talk a lot about taking care of the ball and how important that is, and how it's the job and the responsibility of the players. But in a moment like that, you do have to step outside of all of that. You just have to feel bad for this kid because that I can tell you guys from experience, because I've fumbled crossing the goal line, and I've fumbled to lose us a game before. So I've had both of the things that happened to him. I've had them both happen to me, and I can tell you there's no worse feeling in the world. Like I can't even articulate to you guys how he felt as soon as the ball popped out of his hands, walking off the field, in the locker room. I can't tell you guys how he's feeling right now. Like that's an unbelievable blow to somebody's confidence. That's an unbelievable blow to somebody's just mental resolve. So Dominic Richardson, you are my Criesman of the week, and I sympathize with you. I would love to tell you, head up, King. It is onward and upward from here. Do not let this play define you. Do not let this game define you, because you got a lot of football left. You got a lot of career left in front of you. Just continue. Just take this, use it as a learning opportunity, not to sound cliche, but next time, just don't let it happen again.
I have to pick to lose to Chris in CFP 25. Is that the same thing, Damien?
Say that one more time.
But I have thrown a pick to lose to Chris in CFP 25. Is that the same thing?
I will say,
close.
On Baylor, I'd give it to that edge rusher, the linebacker, whoever that was, who was supposed to contain on the Hail Mary, and instead runs right into the middle of the offensive line. Defense was a mess. They almost gave up 2 Hail Marys on back-to-back plays. The defense was a mess.
They did.
Dave Aranda, that's the kind of game when you lose. That's the kind of game a soon-to-be-fired coach loses.
Yes,
it's just you've seen it all the time. Him, Billy Napier with Texas A&M. You can just feel it. It does not feel like Dave Aranda's going to make it to next season out.
Yeah. And for the Colorado offensive line has improved. Camp 8 sacks against Baylor. They lost. They'd given up 8 their first 3 games. Folks, that does it for our Week 4 reaction show. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a little bit of something as you walked through the week with us. Great set of games. We're going to do it again next week. We got Bama, Georgia. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in the next week. It's time. It's time. If you are not subscribed to the show, change that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, all the places that you can get podcasts, we are there. And that includes YouTube.
Yes.
Where you can see our smiling faces. You can see Damien's incredible hat collection, which we are told is 70 to 80 deep. So he's going to be digging deep in the bag. I'm excited to see that this year. And,
there's a chance I may or may not have overpromised with a potential to underdeliver. But I told my wife I'm going to fix that because I'm going to go out and buy some new hats.
That's
like, don't forget, you just retired from the NFL and you don't make the same amount of money that you used to. So keep that in mind.
It's all good. One good investment, Damien, and we're back.
Right.
But yes, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can see our smiling faces. You can see shorts, all kinds of different stuff on YouTube from us, and some video that illustrates some things that we're talking about. It's a lot of fun on YouTube with us. So subscribe there. We're closing in on 10,000 subscribers there. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been our Week 4 reaction show. I will be back on Wednesday with some special guests, and we'll be back, of course, on Thursday with our picks show and looking ahead to Week 5. For Chris Vannini, for Damien Harris, I am David Ubben. Thank you, guys. This has been Until Saturday. And by the way, before we go out, I was going to say bring back the turnover chain. But guess what made a cameo appearance in the final minutes of Miami's 50-15 win over South Florida? It might have been a counterfeit. It might have been a cheap imitation. But you know what? The turnover chain was back in spirit. And for that, I could not be happier. What a week 4. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.